feel like I have to kill Melon first, because if we're gonna have a chef versus chef battle, then the imposter chef has to go first. But then, if Nathan does join, he's a real chef. And what's more impostery than somebody from the real world playing a chef deck in... I thought I had more time. But, nevertheless, hello everybody. Welcome back to the first episode in a long time of Late Night Magic Monday, or Late Night Monday Magic? Late Monday Night Mad? This is not going well. Regardless, it's the talk show thing that we used to do every week here on Predator Gaming. I'm your host, Seth Cross, and we decided to bring it back, at least for one day, because there is something going on in the Magic community that I felt was worth spending about an hour of talking about with you, the people. You people. You know who you are. But that is the Forgotten Legends, Adventures of Forgotten Legends set is coming out in a couple of weeks. Actually, what's today? Today's the 6th? 6th? Yeah, no. Yesterday was the 4th, right? 4th of July. Yeah. So today would be the 5th. That is how numbers work. However, yeah. So in about 10 days then. No, 11 days. I just did this math. I did this math in my brain, which does work, except when it doesn't. So in about 11 days, we're going to have the pre-release for Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. And with that comes, of course, a Commander precon style set. No, not set. A set of precons. You know, you would think with the 20 minutes I sat here, I would have rehearsed this more. But here we are. So, we do know that there's going to be 4 decks. There is going to... And we know what the 4 commanders on the face of the product are going to be. We don't know anything about the replacement commanders, which, of course, everybody knows that I have an invested interest in, because I do love me some replacement commanders. So I'm sure when those are fully previewed, which I believe is going to happen this week, we are going to talk about them a little bit more. So who knows, maybe this isn't the only time that this is going to come back. So, today I just want to take, like I said, a quick hour. These are supposed to be kind of like time shows, you know, our late night talk show. And I want to just kind of go over what these are. And the cool thing is that we got these previewed so far ago, like last week basically, that the websites where you build your decks, deck stats, art deck, tapped out if you have to, I guess, and all the others have been able to upload the image, and people have been able to make decks, which means there's EDH rec data for these cards already. So like we don't even have the full deck list. So, if anything, this is probably like the purest data you're going to get, because what happens a lot of the time, and the EDH recast, or recast, I'm sorry, has even talked about this once upon a time in the earlier parts of their episodes, that the data kind of gets, not tainted, but people will just upload the deck list itself, and then like make a copy and then alter, but that deck list, that stock precon deck list, will stay in their data for a little while. So, it's interesting now to see that since we don't have the entire deck list, what people are building basically off the cuff. They have nothing to go on, except for obviously the abilities, and like you can use the themes and the colors on EDH Rec itself. So, it's a very, very exciting time to be seeing these cards and the data and the way people are brewing them now. Before things get changed, and there are going to be like some precon cards that are just going to be stuck in there because maybe they're good for the deck, or maybe because we're always going to see precon data in there. You never know. So like I said, we already know the face commanders. There are 4 of them. They are interesting. So it's always strange when they do less than 5, because Magic being 5 colors is just, it's easily divided in sets of 5. But when they do sets of 4, they have to kind of mix up how the colors are. It can't just all be 2 colors. It can't just all be 3 colors. Can't be all 1 colors, because then something will get left out, and they try to balance these as much as they humanly possibly can. So these are also there's a lot of lore to these characters, which unfortunately I'm not very well versed in. If I was, I'd probably be more excited. Not to say that I'm not excited, but I would probably be more excited seeing names of, you know, characters I followed in like the books or D&D modules or this or that. I did try to do a little bit of research on some of the characters today, but it did not go well because everybody is talking about these characters in the sense that they are going to be cards. So, it's very hard to find like wiki information. So if anybody out there does have lore stuff, I would love to see content based on that aspect of these characters, so that we can kind of, get to know them more than just what their abilities are printed on 2.5 by 3.5 inch piece of cardboard. With that being said, I have rambled on just long enough, and we are going to start with the first card, which is probably my wife's favorite card, at least for the precons. This is Galarian, Kindler of Hope. This is an elf knight legendary creature. It's a 4/4 for 1 green, white, and blue. It has vigilance and allows you to look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast aura and equipment spells from the top of your library, and when you cast an equipment spell this way, it gains when this equipment enters the battlefield. Attach it to target creature you control. So it's a mix of things, right? So it is card advantage in the sense that you can play things off the top of your deck, which is not something that you had in your hand, so it's a card that you didn't already know. It is potentially Voltron-y, of course. Anytime you're talking about auras and equipment, you can have your commander be kind of beefed up and then hit people very hard. And it's got a decent body. For 4 mana, it's a 4/4 with vigilance, and it's in colors that should ramp up really well, should have really good removal and really good disruption, and have really good enchantments, as Bant is the enchantress color. Which is frustrating, because I already made a joke to my wife that once we open the green-white elf cleric, her enchantress deck probably is never going to get made.
It's already not made.
I know, and it never will get made. But now you can do Bant equipment with an elf knight, but it's Bant and it's an elf.
I would not run Bant equipment. We both know. Let's be honest.
I don't know this. Why would you not run Bant equipment? That's just cardist. I'm married to a cardist. I apologize, everybody, for her. Yes, I am talking about the good ramp in white. Mostly unfamiliar with these characters. Yeah, so it's been actually really fun to see Shivam on Twitter, because he knows a lot about the Forgotten Realms. So he's somebody that you could really kind of, like, any of the threads that he's been doing, you can kind of get a kick out of those if you are unfamiliar with him, or even if you are familiar with him. He might know stuff that you don't know, or you might know stuff that he doesn't know, and you guys can get into, or you all can get into a good conversation. So, again, there is EDH Direct. What did I just say? There is EDH Direct data for Galarian, or Gallia, and the top cards for her, him, them, are actually swords. So people are definitely looking more into the equipment side of things. There's a Sword of Hearth and Home, which is the newer one from Modern Horizons 2. The Sword of Sinew and Steel, the Sword of Truth and Justice, which are both Modern Horizon 1 cards. And those are there actually are no enchantments, keeping in mind that there's only probably a few decks. There's only 2 decks for Gallia at this time. So, yes, we have data, but it's obviously not going to be like a plethora of data at that. But then, looking at some of the things that you have, Rafika the Many in here for creatures, that's interesting. Obviously, whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gains double strike until end of turn. And it also has Exalted. A lot of people are used to Rafik trying to do the one-hit wonder with, again, enchantments or equipment, depending on how you want to do it. So this is actually interesting to see him as an engine piece. Not an engine piece, but as a facilitator for Gallia to then do the damage. By not only turning it into a 5/5 thanks to Exalted, but then double strike. So basically, 1 more power and you can one-hit somebody. Because 6, double strike. Oh, never mind. You can 2-strike somebody. I apologize. I don't know how I math. I did mean to say that you could 2-strike somebody. I don't know why I did that. Leonian Shikari, which is the cat soldier where you can activate equip abilities anytime you can cast an instant. Very good for tricky plays when it comes to ban equipment. Stoneforge Mystic, Enters the battlefield and search for an equipment card, reveal it and put it in your hand. So obviously, again, people are going very hard for the equipment. SRAM, nobody should be surprised. SRAM gives you draw whenever you are going to cast an aura, an equipment, or a vehicle, which of course the vehicles are not going to really matter here. Noble Hierarch, because it has Exalted, and of course it taps for any of the banned colors. I'm trying to see if there's anything in here that I would be surprised at. As of right now, no. There's Bruna, Light of Alabaster. Probably, people are either probably predicting to see a Bruna reprint in this deck, or are putting there as a secondary for auras. I haven't quite clicked down to the enchantment side, which I will do now. Sigarda's Aid is in there. Eldrazi Conscription is in there. So yes, there are some enchantments. Battle Mastery for double strike. Spirit Mantle for protection from colors. Steel of the Godhead for +2/+2 lifelink and unblockable. I wouldn't be surprised if all the other of these things are. Shield of the Oversoul's in there. Yep. Aqueous Form. Finest Hour for, again, more Exalted. So yeah, lots of really good stuff. I think I'm most interested to see what new cards are in the deck that are not legendary creatures. With notoriously, Wizards has always done legendary creatures within the deck that do something kind of similar, but in a completely different way. Or sometimes they don't even stick to that. For instance, the Morph deck from a while ago, both of those legendary creatures, which was Ryami and Volrath, had absolutely nothing to do with morphs. There was no synergy whatsoever with the theme of the deck, which was tribal morphs, which is the not CDC. Kadena. Kadena's the linking sorceress. Precon for that year. So sometimes they do stick kind of sorta to, you know, for instance, what's a good example of? Actually can't think of a super good example where a replacement commander stuck super hardcore to the theme of the deck, more so than they could just synergize with cards that were in the deck. For instance, the Ryami one, there were a decent amount of keywords in the deck, and it wanted to exile cards so that it could steal their keywords. So that is a thing, but again, nothing to do as far as that main synergy, which was Morph Tribal. So for Galea, I think most people are gonna go toward equipment other than auras, because equipment are just more sturdy. If a creature dies with an equipment on it, the equipment just stays on the battlefield, and the auras, meanwhile, would go to the graveyard. However, I think there is enough recursion, obviously, in green and white for enchantments that it shouldn't really be a hard thing to make the deck decent. I feel like anybody who does the aura thing is really just going to go like with your standard Bant Enchanter style deck. So with a focus on auras, and again, beefing up Galena or Galea to, I don't know why I'm putting that in there, but Galea, so that they could just punch you once or twice, and that could be the end of the game. Okay. So, that is, of course, first of 4. The next one is Prosper, Tome Bound. So I like this for a couple different reasons, and I will get into them after I read all the... Let's read all the text, I guess, first. This is a Tiefling Warlock legendary creature, a 1/4 with Death Touch for 2, a black and a red. Has Mystic Arcanum. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. That's important. Pact Boon. Whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. So I like this because seeing Tiefling, right? Printed on a card is interesting. We did have, Azra, I believe, back in Battle Bond, that very much looked like they were supposed to be Magic the Gathering's versions of Tiefling. So now that we have a full-on D&D crossover, we can print certain species or race names that we hadn't previously printed, or that we made something different for to work in the Magic universe. So that's kind of cool. The other interesting part of this one is the way that both abilities are done. If we were to go through the Forgotten Realms set, not the precons, but the actual cards in the set, which have been most of the preview season so far, we would notice that there are a lot of cards that are using D&D spell names, D&D ability or feat names, or class or racial like bonuses, using the names as almost as a mechanic or a keyword, but they're usually not. There's so many of them for one, and they're not really keyworded things. They're the things that already kind of exist and that we've seen multiple times and have never been keyworded before. So the flavor here is that we are again kind of combining Dungeons and Dragons with Magic the Gathering. So Mystic Arcanum at the beginning of your end step, exile, like this kind of impulsy card advantage is not completely new to Red. Red will typically do it like either as an activated ability or on your upkeep. Exile a card and then you can play it for that turn. So this is actually kind of interesting that you do it at your end step and until the end of your next turn you get to play it. So if it's an instant, for instance, if it's a instant speed removal, you can actually cast that even if you didn't know what it was, like until obviously you exiled it at your end step. So that's kind of cool. And then the fact that playing the cards from exile, that's really interesting too, to get the treasure tokens, because everybody should know by now this is a black and red card. Black treasure tokens sacrifice themselves, which means an artifact goes to the graveyard, which means you know I'm gonna have Marionette Master in this deck. If it's not reprinted in this deck, which it should be, because for some reason marionettes and the sacrifice of, you know, artifacts and stuff like that seem to be actually kind of warlocky, if you think about it. Like marionettes in the sense of like controlling somebody, I don't know, it seems somewhat either demonic, which tiefling are supposedly have demonic bloodlines, or warlocky where they have these boons that are you know, from old ones or old gods or anything like that. So I think it would be very interesting to see a Marionette Master reprint, and if not, I'm going to put it in the deck. And speaking of putting it in the deck, I would be very surprised if Marionette Master was not actually in the EDH rec data. Wow, people are running, Valky God of Lies, which is Tybalt Cosmic Imposter on the other side, because Tybalt exiles cards, which you can then play, which then give you the treasure token. That's really nice. Actually, I like that a lot. Jessica's Will, because it does exile the cards. I didn't even think of some of these cards. These are really, really cool things. Rakdos lately has been getting a lot of interesting ways of doing things. Like when we had the Madness, the Anya Falconwrath deck, now we're getting something like this, and there was one other one that did something differently. The new Chainer, the Rakdos Chainer, where you discard in order to play creatures from the graveyard, and then anything that got played from the graveyard had haste, including it could be the card that you discarded. So good. There's so many like little tricks and things to decks like this. So I, again, still want to see a Marionette Master. I'm not seeing one yet. However, I am seeing an Opposition Agent. Gross. Wait a minute, how did they put this in here? This deck's not even white. Anyway, top cards. We do see Bergie, who is the god of storytelling, who basically gives you mana for casting spells. Dockside Extortionist, because again, treasures, which is funny, because the treasures themselves don't do anything with Prosper. They are just something that you're already going to get. So it's like Dockside Extortionist in here because somebody saw red and the card said treasure, or just because it's red, or you know what I mean? I'm curious where that comes from. And then we do have a couple of Chandras. We do have Outpost Siege, which is one of the earlier forms I think we saw of this Impulse Draw that red has, where you would exile a card at the beginning of your upkeep, which is what we first saw way back when, and then you only had that turn to play it. And then we did see a few weaker ones where it was that turn to cast it, which obviously you run into problems when you exile a land, because you don't cast your lands unless you're Stephen Green from Commander Versus. Sorry. Marionette Master is here, but you do get to play your land, so this is good that like you play a land and get a treasure token. That's actually really strong. I like that a lot. Imagine if you could do that like even more. So Pitiless Plunder is in here, so I've seen Jessica's Will. All I need to see is an Underworld Breach, and boom, we have a combo deck. I don't know what the end goal is. Underworld Breach is there. It is the third highest enchantment with 35% of 17 decks with a 13% synergy. And Jessica's Will was one of the top cards. And Pitiless Plunder. and Dockside Extortionist, and Marionette Master. It's a combo deck. Red is very combo-tastic when it gets out of hand. Gonti is also on the list, as Ruffin from the audience did say. So, I believe it was in top cards or high synergy cards. It is top cards. It is in 53% of 17 decks with 45% synergy. Gonti enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, then put the rest on the bottom of that library in a random order. You may look at and cast that card for as long as it remains exiled. I don't believe there will be any issue with the difference between cast and play, because cast, I think, is a form of play. It's just a form specific to spells, but you are then playing a card. So I believe that's fine. And, well, then again, this is early data, so I don't want to say, like, if this many people are, you know, doing it, I'm sure it works. One of my favorite cards in red is in the data for this deck, and that's Stolen Strategy. Stolen Strategy is a 5-cost enchantment, cost 4 in red. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of each opponent's library. Until the end of turn, you may cast non-land cards from among those exiled cards, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. Once again, cast, play, shouldn't really matter, but it's still a really fun card. It's one of the few chaotic style cards that I actually really like. Atali's in here, seems really good. Interesting, Magda's in here. Magda, Brazen Outlaw, for 1 to red, Dwarf Berserker, a 2/1. Other dwarves you control get +1/+0, which should be interesting for Forgotten Realms, because I'm sure there will be dwarves, because D&D. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, create a treasure token, sacrifice 5 treasures, search your library for an artifact or dragon card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So you won't get the treasure from putting something on the battlefield. That is not the same as player cast. However, the fact here is, I think, that Prosper fuels Magda to then be a tutor for scary artifacts or dragons. And Rakdos, actually, in general, does have a decent amount of scary dragons. So I could honestly easily see this being kind of like a hidden commander thing, where Prosper is like just really good value and card advantage and a little bit of ramp, and then like you have black, so you just tutor out Magda, and then all of a sudden, here go my 10 tokens, and I find my 2 artifact combo pieces. This is a combo deck. If I didn't say it before, let me say it again. This is a combo deck, which somehow I'm probably going to try to brew it innocently and accidentally go infinite, except not have a way to win, and then people are going to be like, hey, Seth, why do you keep playing Averna? And I'm going to be like, what are you talking about? This is Prosper. And I don't know where I went down the rabbit hole with this joke. Okay. The third card, which I know a lot of people saw and were very interested in, is, I'm going to say this wrong, Sephris or Sephries of the Hidden Ways. This is a 2/3 legendary human wizard for white, blue, black, otherwise known as Esper. Whenever one or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, venture into the dungeon. New mechanic, we'll talk about it in a second. This ability triggers only once each turn. Create Undead. Whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, Venture is an interesting mechanic for D&D set, which basically says you get to put up these little dungeon cards. They're similar to like emblems from Planeswalkers, but they're a little bit more interactive. So it is a dungeon in the sense of it is a layout of a dungeon, and every time you venture, you basically move to another room, and each room has an effect. And then there are cards that pay off when you have completed a dungeon. Like, whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. There are cards that when you play them or when they attack, if you've completed a dungeon, they get something. Or just static bonuses for if you've created or if you've completed a dungeon to do, like, it gets stat bonuses or something. There are only 3 dungeons in the set. I did not get a good look at all 3 dungeons, so if they are overpowered, underpowered, or anything otherwise, I could not tell you. Simply the nature of the beast. I have not heard whether or not this deck is going to come with any specific dungeons, like how a lot of the times the decks will come with specific tokens for their deck, Will this get all 3 dungeons? Will there be dungeons that are specific to this deck? I don't know. I believe we were told that there should only be 3 dungeons from Forgotten Realms, but is that the standard set? Because obviously these are commander cards and not standard legal. So is there a loophole where they could sneak in another dungeon? Who knows? Nobody knows. I'm sure Wizards know. But so interesting. You can mill yourself. The creatures can die. You can discard them. It has to just... A creature card has to be put into your graveyard from anywhere in order to venture. So I feel like this is something that you could go kind of crazy with as far as the dungeon. I don't know the rules. I imagine you can go through the same dungeon. So if you have a favorite dungeon with... you like a certain path or something in the dungeon, or if you like multiple paths in the dungeon and there's an answer in there. I don't know. Again, I don't remember what the dungeons all were. They were famous like dungeon modules from D&D, specifically the Forgotten Realms. I do remember seeing that in their names, but as far as what each room does, I did not really take notice of that. But if there are certain dungeons that have certain answers, like if something exiles a creature or destroys a creature, or deals damage or gains you life or draws you cards or whatever, it would be interesting to see how a deck like this would mill itself, discard, hit cards, get them back, blah blah blah, and basically like kind of loop and do small value things that then translate into large payoffs toward the end of the game. I don't know that this is something that I would specifically play, but I can think of a few cards in mind that like you just want the cards to come back to hand. I wonder if there's an artifact synergy here, because I believe, what is it, Mirror Retriever and Junk Diver, I think one of them, or maybe one of the weaker artifact recursion pieces will bring something back to your hand, not to the battlefield. Junk Diver, did I say Drunk Driver just now? Junk Diver or Mirror Retriever, I think, may actually put them onto the battlefield. I don't fully know. There are 2 decks in EDHREX data, so not very many. I am interested to see what... So the new cards are mostly recursion cards. Recursion card. Some enter the battlefield effects. Shriek Maw, Solemn, Esper Sentinel, which is just a good white card now. Anthem Mutineer, which I like the idea of bringing that back from the battlefield. That way you're not encoring it, because that will exile target creatures, non-salamander creatures, and give out 4/3s. Whispers in here, which is really good. Jalira, Master Polymorphist. That's an interesting idea if it could be kind of like a polymorph style deck, because you have to sacrifice the creature for some polymorph spells, so it will go to the graveyard. Obviously, you will get to venture into the dungeon, and then once you complete the dungeon, you can bring that creature back and be polymorphed again, or it'll have an enter the battlefield effect, so it could just kind of sit there. I like in the... Oh, wow, there aren't even top cards for this, which again, there's only 2 decks, so that could very well be why. Yahenni's in here for a sacrifice outlet, I'm sure. Falconwrath Noble's in here, so that does speak to the fact that there should be aristocrats. Scrap Trawler is another good one that will bring artifacts back. The Saraseer, again, another good sacrifice outlet in black. Eternal Dragon. I've been seeing Eternal Dragon a lot recently, and that's probably because I just recently pulled it out of my Quintorius, my Lorehold deck, because it was something that I could potentially put in the graveyard, bring back, put in the graveyard, bring back. So I can kind of see it, right? Like you plane cycle it, which means you get to venture. It's probably better for this deck than it would have been for Quinty, because like 2 mana, you get a planes, and to venture into the dungeon once Sephries is out on the battlefield, and then like you can eventually complete the dungeon and get this flying 5/5 back. Not the worst thing ever. It's, you know, kind of like a good value card. Sir Conrad the Grim, obviously going to probably be reprinted in the deck. I would stake a claim, which is kind of funny because he just recently was printed in the Zendikar precon, one of them. The Neth? No, it wasn't Nethroy. What was it? Was it the human deck? He was just reprinted in some deck. in Zendikars precons. But whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad will deal 1 damage to each opponent. It has a mill activated ability for 1 in the black. Each player mills a card. So basically, you get to kind of do everything that Seth wants to do. Seth almost probably thinks of Sir Conrad as like a right-hand man. Like, these two go very well together, and I would not be at all surprised if, again, this was reprinted in the deck. Sheoldred, interesting. I don't see Sheoldred being a reprint, but that would be kind of cool if they did like reprint some cards like Sheoldred or whatever. I feel like they would be maybe too worried that people would look into it too hard and be like, oh, we're going back to New Phyrexia or whatever. And they'd be like, no, don't do it. So looking through the creatures on EDH Trek, it was a lot of enter the battlefield effects or creatures that deal with other creatures dying or themselves dying, right? So it is very much, you know, value stuff. Nimble Obstructionist, which is a cycle to counter a activated or triggered ability. That's kind of cute, especially if you are going to be bringing things back to your hand a lot. I like that. That's interesting. And again, would trigger Sir Conrad. For this one, I'm not really sure what else could potentially be included in this deck that we aren't seeing now. I am very interested in what's going to be the replacement commanders, especially if they do anything like they did with the last precon set, where they had 1 legendary creature that shared all the colors of the face commander and could just immediately take the helm of it, and then they had 2 single color legendary creatures they didn't have partner with. They didn't really combine in any way, shape, or form, but one was a single color and one was the other single color of the 2 color precon deck. So for instance, the white-black one had a white legendary creature and a black legendary creature, and then a white-black legendary creature as far as replacement commanders. Well, replacement commanders, because at that point the white and the black single ones are not replacements because you cannot put them both in the command zone. So I will be interested to see how they mix it up again this year. I would be very surprised if we didn't see some more of the famous like companion style cards, especially with we've already seen Drizzt and Brunor. So I would be very shocked if we didn't see at least 2 more. Wolfgore and Catelyn, I believe is her name. I probably butchered that or just am completely off, so I apologize. But the other 2 like main companions of the hall characters, it would be kind of strange to only see 2 for the whole set. I mean, granted, they are probably the more famous of the 2, especially the Dark Elf one, you know. But I would still be kind of shocked if we didn't see the other 2 in some capacity or references. At the very least, we should see them in flavor text or something. So the last, but certainly not least, I don't know, because I haven't actually read most of these cards until today, of the face commanders. Whew, I'm gonna try to say that one. Vrondis. Rage of the Ancients is a 5/4 Dragon Barbarian for 3, a green and a red, or a red and a green, depending on, you know, how dyslexic you are like me. Has Enrage. Whenever it is dealt damage, you may create a 5/4 red and green dragon spirit creature token with, when this creature deals damage, sacrifice it. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, you may have Vrondis deal 1 damage to itself. So, there's a couple interesting parts about this card in general. One, even though it is a Dragon Barbarian, it is technically a Dragonborn. I think that's what it was. Dragonborn from D&D. So they didn't want to print a whole new type for it, which is understandable. Basically, they're humanoid draconic creatures. They are supposedly have, you know, dragon ancestry and stuff like that. I mean, it's usually pretty obvious because they do have draconic features. As As far as the rolling dice thing, that is something that we have seen before, but not in Black Border Magic. If you think all the way back to Unstable, they had an entire theme built around rolling dice. And it was something that when that came out, that was probably one of the things that sold me on Unstable, more so than any of the other two unsets that came before it, was that we got certain things that I felt like could be very well adapted into Black Border Magic or regular legal Magic. And here we are, we're seeing it. So a lot of the cards in the set do deal with rolling a d20, which is a randomized 20-sided dice as opposed to a spin down 20-sided die. Somebody said that they had two different names. I think one is just called a spin down, the other one is an actual d20. So d20, the randomized ones are more randomized for the sake of rolling for a random effect. So I do not remember what colors the dice rolling is predominantly in. I think it does exist in all colors, but I feel like red it existed in a lot more than some of the others. Or at least some of those cards stuck out more in my mind. So it could just be that. But still, interesting take for dice rolling on a black bordered legendary creature. I do really like that. I would imagine that because of that, one, the whole dealing damage to itself, I imagine that Pyrohemia is going to be in this deck. Whether it's in the precon or people are all just putting Pyrohemia in it, where you can pay a red mana and deal 1 damage to all creatures, and I think all players. So you could pay 3 red mana and get 3 5/4s. You make fair. When this deals damage, sacrifice it. Okay, so they don't have haste. Interesting. Not that red doesn't have many capabilities of giving your creatures haste, but it's interesting to see that the tokens themselves don't have haste. So whenever they deal damage at all, so even if they block, they're sacrificed. That's strange. I'm trying to think because, like, Warstorm Surge is an enchantment that I believe when a creature enters the battlefield, it deals its damage to at least the player, but I think any target. At least the creature and a player, but I believe that was always errated to any target. With that being said, these things would basically come in and just be lava axes. Like, it would essentially be a 1-mana lava axe with Pyrohemia. I mean, you know, accounting for the cost of, obviously, Rondis, which is 5, and Warstorm Surge, which I believe is also 5 or 6 for an enchantment. Not sure. But still, to basically be able to, every turn, pay 3 mana, deal 15 damage, and then, God forbid, you're playing, like, Impact Tremors and Perforos with it. Wow, this deck just kind of builds itself, doesn't it? So, looking at the new cards, you can already see at least one of the dice rolling cards. It is an Elf Shaman called Delina, Wild Mage. You roll, and 1 through 14, you get an effect, and then 15 through 20, you get another effect. And I think this is the one that kind of like stood out to me because it was a Wild Mage. And of course, we're friends with our buddies over at Barbarian Cafe, where I think all their casters have like the Wild Magic Surge ability that the DM kind of randomly rolls as things happen. Reprints, nothing interesting. Fetch lands, really. And Force of Vigor for creatures. I am wondering if maybe not all of the new cards are up on the site because I'm not seeing any of the dice rolling cards in like the creature section. That first one was up in the top. So it's very possible that we won't really see enough of the cards until the set is fully released and we're able to see everything. So this data will probably look, at least this data out of all 4 of them will probably look very different because the mechanic is more dependent on something that's being introduced now. I'm now down into the instance. I'm still not seeing a lot of card rolling or dice rolling. Tybalt's Trickery is in here, but it doesn't technically say to roll a dice. Yeah. We're gonna have to really wait and see what kind of dice rolling effects come out of the rest of the set, because I believe there is still like not a full 100. There's like 50 cards I think left for this week, plus everything that's in the precons probably in part of the week. So we'll probably kind of have to wait and see what else comes out to kind of see how this deck will be able to play. I think most of what we're going to see, and now that we're down in the enchantment style, so okay, they're Dragon Spirit tokens, because I see Dragon Tempest here, which is a 1 red enchantment. Whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, it gains haste until end of turn. These do not have haste. They are just 5/4 red and green Dragon Spirit creature token with, when this creature deals damage, sacrifice it. However, the bottom part of Dragon Tempest says whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. So this is, again, like, this is actually a cheaper version of Warstorm Surge that specifically synergizes with Rondis because the fact of their dragons. So if you activate Rondis, if you activate Pyrohemia, Rondis will take damage. That will trigger the token to enter the battlefield. That will trigger Dragon Tempest. Dragon Tempest will deal the damage, which will then trigger the token to die. Then you can activate Pyrohemia again in response before the token is sacrificed to keep a dragon on the field. That way the damage will scale up. That's where I'm trying to go with this, to try to think of everything that can possibly happen. And then heaven forbid you make Rondis indestructible, or find a way to make it so that 4 damage isn't enough to kill him. Food chain's in here. That's interesting. So food chain, Pyrohemia, and a way to make Rondis indestructible, or just simply not die to damage in some way, shape, or form. And you have an infinite combo that kills everybody because Pyrohemia does damage to opponents, or to all players. What are you going to do with it? I don't know, but it's there. I do like the fact, now that I'm realizing that they are Dragon Spirit creature tokens. I thought they were just Spirit tokens at first when I read it, even though I did just read it out loud to all of you. I wasn't really, like, sold on it. Like, alright. But now, like, Crucible, I'm seeing Crucible of Fire here, so dragon creatures get +3/+3, which, I mean, that alone makes it so that you can activate Pyrohemia 3 more times on Rondis. So that means you can get that many more dragon creature tokens. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. I'm not seeing anything. I do see Warstorm Surge in here. I do see ways of giving it haste with Fires of Yavimaya. Rhythm of the Wild is interesting here. I don't think people realize that Rhythm of the Wild says non-token creatures you control have Riot, which is haste or a counter. Just saying. I am seeing things like Parallel Lives, Doubling Season, Greater Good is in here. That's really good. Sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to the power, and then discard 3 cards. Obviously, you'll get to keep 2 cards. It's very good for this, especially if you're going to have to sacrifice a token anyway. It's a free sack outlet. This one I feel like will also be kind of combo-y. I don't actually see. I'm gonna go back up to utility artifacts for a second. Maybe I missed Dark Steel Plate's in there. Boom, we found it. So you get Dark Steel Plate on Rondis. You get out the Dragon Tempest and Pyrohemia. And no, the Food Chain and Pyrohemia. That's what I was gonna say. And there, everybody's dead. All the creatures are dead. Everybody's dead. You have, like, infinite damage. You technically have infinite red mana, but you are red or green mana. No, it would have to be red in order to be able to keep triggering Pyrohemia, but you have to pay in the mana every time you want to do the cycle again. So interesting. Very, very interesting card. I'm curious what... I'm guessing it'll be kind of like for simpler strategies, right? Or for simpler endings. I do see Finale of Devastation. I wonder if there is Craterhoof in this data already. Keep in mind there are only 4 decks, but it is a token deck. There would be no point to giving everything double strike, because on the first strike they would have to sacrifice Lathless. Oh, because of the fire breathing on all dragons. Because I was about to say, Lathless says non-token dragons. Udvara Hellkite. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Attack with these dragon spirits, and they may go away, but the flying 6/6s that you're gonna get will not. Interesting. Red dragons in here. I do like the fact that they did chromatic dragons. I think that's pretty cool. I'm not seeing Craterhoof in here. Interesting. Big dumb creatures, and we're not putting Craterhoof in it? Are we okay, Commander community? Are we feeling alright? Is everybody alright? I don't know. I'm worried. I'm worried somebody's sick. But yeah, that is all 4 of the legendary creatures that are going to be on the face of the precon packages. They were very unique, at least from each other, right? Nothing felt like it was hard to differentiate from the other. Nothing felt like it was going to pull from another strategy. I'm very interested to see, like I said, the replacement commanders. I have a vested interest in that for future The Alchemist Refuge episodes, of course, and hopefully future videos if I ever finish my current videos up. I'm very interested to see what other like new just creatures and spells and enchantments and maybe even lands that we get with this set. I'm hoping that Arcane Signet makes yet another comeback as a staple piece, similar to how Sol Ring is, because I'm running out of Arcane Signets. I have so many decks, as you can see. Most of these are mine. As a matter of fact, I think only 3 of these are not mine, and there's the 3 back there. Hey Melon, if you're in the chat, it's Tulane. Your best friend. I enjoyed these decks. I enjoyed the stream. I enjoyed looking at these cards, and I really like how quickly nowadays we get the commanders out so that we can see this kind of data from people brewing these decks. Will I do one of these on tomorrow night's The Alchemist Refuge? I have absolutely no idea. It's tempting because the deck list of the precons don't exist. However, we still have lots of uncommanders to do from this set too. There are multiple uncommon legendary creatures that we haven't done yet. We did do Tracera? Moondancer? The elf that Danny would like. We did do that last week, and I forgot which one I was going to look at. I think there's another treasure-based one in black and red that I was going to maybe consider. I think there's a cool green and black one to do. So we have lots of options. So I hope everybody is going to come back and join me tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time here on twitch.tv/PredatorGaming for The Alchemist Refuge. And then Friday we are looking to once again have the Phyrexian Arena, which is our commander spell table webcam gameplay. Of course, if you are new to the stream, if you're new to the channel, hopefully you are hitting those follow and subscribe buttons and leaving those likes and comments for my YouTube viewers. Make sure that you leave a comment about what you think is going to be the most interesting one of these commanders. Which one are you looking to build? Which one do you think is going to have the most interesting pieces for you to take apart and put in your own decks? Because we all do it. If you're planning on doing precon battles, like I know a lot of people, including believe a Commander's Herald writer. I don't remember if they're Commander's Herald or EDA Trek, but I remember one of their newer writers is doing that with their son. I tend to do that with my kids here. So let me know if you're doing that. Let me know who you're doing it with and how y'all do it. And then of course, make sure you reach out to our affiliates. I'll have those links down below. They are below the stream right now. inkgaming.com for your custom playmats, dice bags, and everything else of your gaming accessories. And TCG Player if you are looking to pre-order, because pre-release is coming up, and you can pre-order cards. If you are looking to pre-order your singles or your bulk Forgotten Legends. That's a completely different thing. Forgotten Realms cards and other product. Make sure you're using our affiliate link, which is again down below in the video description or the stream details. That's for inkgaming.com. No, that's for tcgplayer.com. And it lets them know that we sent you their way. Man, I gotta get better at saying that. I'm bad at saying that. Hopefully you enjoyed the stream. Hopefully you want to stick around for more of these when I do eventually do more. As these decks come out fully, I may do another one of these, just kind of go over some of the cooler cards. But that's all I have for tonight. I hope you have a fantastic night. I hope you have a fantastic beginning to your week. I know Mondays can be hell, but hopefully your week is fantastic. Everybody, have a good night.